In fire.
Zebras graze across the African savanna, enacting a cycle of migration related since time immemorial. Yet today the vast herds of gazelle and wildebeest are thinning, and the mighty rhino is on the precipice of extinction. Their well-worn paths are followed by more voracious border carnivores. We must hold our breath. Whenever we lose a piece of nature, we lose a part of ourselves.
While we're all enchanted with life on the African plains, we dismiss the delights of creatures closer to home. For the roach, humans are just a passing evolutionary novelty, whilst for humanity, they are primeval marauders, despoiling our cities and homes. When the lights go out, vast herds numbering in the tens of thousands leave their hideaways and start foraging across our fertile domestic landscape. Cockroaches prefer the humid nights as they are sensitive to water loss. During the drier days, they seek moist hideaways. For every roach we see, another 500 or so are lurking. Under fridges, in cracks in the walls, they congregate. The cockroaches' society is not as organised as their descendants, the termites, but they are stigmataxic. They enjoy being close together, touching one another. Theirs was probably the first gregarious community that evolved on Earth. We assume cockroaches are scared of the light, but they have poor eyesight compared to their major alarm system, the cerci, 2 small spikes protruding from their rear, where many tiny hairs can sense the faint movements caused by other roaches' footsteps. Our movements are gale warnings. Signals from the cerci travel through a special elongated nerve cell directly to the leg muscles. They are escaping a few thousandths of a second before they know why. By bypassing the brain, the roach's escape system is lightning fast and almost foolproof.
To go out and actually catch a cockroach outside would take us an hour or two. The best display of cockies, there'd be enough there to feed the frog for probably 3 or 4 nights. But the frog got very, very big. He became disinterested in cockroaches and we couldn't find anything that he was interested in anymore. And he died. But the cockroaches can be quite interesting to watch as they'd run around and find little bits of food and they'd tuck it under and scurry away with it, and it became fascinating watching them.
Roaches also have to share our homes with other creatures. Insects talk to one another by emitting pheromones. Basically, these are smells, often nasty ones. The ant is saying, "This meal is mine." The massive roach has no weapons other than vile odours. Whilst the ant has organisation and a sting that can paralyse the roach. Once cockroaches faced no such danger, then the world was their oyster. Cockroaches evolved in the warm, moist forests, where they flourished to become over half of all God's creatures. This fossil is from the Carboniferous period. It looks freshly crushed by an irate housewife, but the first housewife was still 300 million years in the future. A rich harvest of rotting vegetation provided an endless feast. This was the age of the cockroach.
Cockroaches at one stage were 6 inches, 300 millimeters, about that size. But they got so big that their skeleton couldn't support the wings and appendages, and so that line failed.
As evolution ebbed and flowed, the smaller roaches remained unchanged, becoming food for the development of other species. Life had become dangerous, avoiding frogs, lizards, and dinosaurs.
The design of the cockroaches is superb for the habitats they live in. They're flattened, they're very secretive, their life cycle is very fast. They're also long-lived, and so they then can produce generations and generations of cockroaches.
The cockroach's design was perfect for the now crowded world, where they were forced to squeeze into the ever-narrowing niches between other creatures. Their legs have backward projecting spines. When movement is restricted, they push these against the walls and can lever themselves further into the tiniest of crevices. At the end of their legs, cockroaches have a series of sticky little pads. These enable them to climb up slippery and shiny surfaces. These upwardly mobile insects began their domestic history in the caves of tropical Africa. But as humans walked to colder climates, they were able to elude their unwelcome cave guests. Before they could follow their warm-blooded friends, cockroaches had to find a cosy method of transport. Their chance came in the age of discovery, where amongst warm fermenting food in the holes of galleons, they started explorations of their own. These nautical roaches participated in many great adventures, cruising with Columbus and Cook. When Drake pirated the Spanish treasure ship, he got more than he bargained for, introducing the American roach to England. Arriving in the new port, they infested bakehouses, hotels, and any place with an abundance of hot air. The roaches moved to the domestic bliss of our homes had to await the Industrial Revolution. When we began to burn massive amounts of coal and oil, we released the stored up heat from the prehistoric forests cockroaches once dominated. By heating our cities and homes, we unwittingly reproduced the perfect cockroach habitat. Once the word reached the cockroach kingdom, their final migration began. soon they're everywhere.
This for start.
We find many of them around, and as a matter of fact, we keep our boots purposely rolled all the way down so that we don't bring them back to the firehouse with us.
Я живу в этом доме со своей женой, и у нас в квартире появляются тараканы. В квартирах. Избавиться от них пробовали многими способами.
Dice, la cucaracha se introduce en todas las rendijas que hay en la casa, en los cumbos, y cría ese animalito pequeñito, blanquito, y eso se desarrolla y ya.
They're big, they're like this big, and they just fly around.
Eran chiquitas y después acaban grandes.
I got a cockroach that talks to me, and I listen to him talk, and everybody say I'm bugging. You know? That's life, man.
Once snug in their new homes, they went searching for the essentials of cockroach life: food and sex.
Cockroaches very characteristically have these very long antennae, and those antennae have a lot of sensory receptors, as they call, to detect chemicals, pheromones of the opposite sex for one thing. Also, they can detect presence or absence of food. When it gets really close, then they have palps from the mouth parts. Now, these palps have very sensitive chemical receptors, and it takes very little food for them to pick it up. And they will then touch the food, and if it's acceptable, then they shove it closer into the mouth, and the mandibles then take over and break up the food, and they ingest it.
After this banquet, the roaches can survive for months before needing to refuel. Cockroaches are omnivores. They'll eat almost anything. They aid their digestion by continually vomiting their food to remix it with the enzymes in their mouths. This charming habit can be unhealthy for us if they've eaten their first course in the sewer before having dessert in our kitchens. Roaches are not effective germ carriers because whenever they eat, they are fastidious about cleaning themselves afterwards. As they are guided by smells, they would be blinded by the odour of their previous meals.
Well, I'd always thought that the domestic cockroaches give all cockroaches a bad name because worldwide there's at least 5,000 cockroaches. But there's only 6 that are regarded as pests. And most native cockroaches are very agreeable sort of things to work with and to look at. I call these the king of the cockroaches because they are so large. They go by the scientific name of Macropenethia rhinoceros. Their role in the forest is very similar to giant earthworms. They look like little bulldozers because they've got this shovel-shaped front and very heavy armoured spiny legs so that they can shovel into the ground. What they're doing is taking leaves from the surface down into their burrows, and they feed on these leaves throughout the entire year. So they're recycling plant nutrients. I just thought that because they were so long-lived that they might be a good idea to show the general public what nice sort of cockroaches there can be.
My husband gave them to me for a wedding anniversary present some years ago. I called them Bonnie and Clyde. I was thrilled. They're interesting little creatures. It's hard to imagine, but they do have little personalities. There aren't many ladies who are strange enough to want them as pets, so I don't think there's a great market for them in the romance field.
But romance is always on the cockroach mind. At 3 months, the females become fertile and begin to release sex pheromones. The males rely totally on smell in their search for the perfect blind date. While the female uses the subtle magic of perfumes, the male has a more direct approach. He uses a series of hooks to catch a female. Aroused, the male begins the courting ritual. Fluttering his wings and turning his back to his prospective mate, he thrusts his genitalia at his lover's rear. Then with a twist, she is hooked literally for the hour or two required for copulation. Females can store the sperm in their body for up to a year, producing eggs at will. The self-reliant females are now walking population explosions. Unlike other insects, each egg contains up to 30 young.
Laying eggs in a protected egg case would allow them to go into habitats that other things might not be able to, such as very high heat or very high humidity. And these things are highly impervious to chemicals.
After 6 weeks, the baby roaches emerge. A single pair of cockroaches in a single year can breed up to 400,000 descendants, which is enough to carpet the average home to a depth of 1 metre.
We've seen people here whose distress about cockroaches is so great that, you know, they really can't go into certain parts of their houses at night. Or if they do, they're hypervigilant. They're always looking around to check and see. And they destroy all the sense of comfort and relaxation that you associate with being at home. For somebody really afraid of cockroaches, well, you might have a cockroach in a box at one end of the hall, and they might be at the other. And then they approach it slowly, and they stop when they feel they don't want to go any further. And when they feel that they've settled once again, they come a little bit closer. But they're under the control, as it were, of the progress up the stepladder. That's called systematic desensitization. And that's the technique that's favored. Another one is called flooding, and it's pretty much like what it sounds. People get exposed to it full on, straight off, right away. That's pretty unpleasant, but flooding is quicker. That's what the evidence suggests. It might mean, well, actually, standing next to a box with a few cockroaches in it, and maybe putting your hand in there and letting them crawl around on your hand. Now, for me or for you, perhaps that wouldn't be so pleasant, but, we wouldn't mind. But for a true cockroach phobic, well, that would be most arduous. Most people seemed to opt for the gentle step-by-step approach.
The danger of the roach has been greatly exaggerated.
Die!
They have more to fear from humans and vice versa.
So we've got 3 live ones here in a jar. And then what we're going to do is we're going to project a thought into the cockroaches that they're going to die a really horrible, gruesome death.
The cockroach will go in and while he's enjoying his feast, he will be zapped. A charge of electricity will go through his antennas and legs, and he will burn.
There's a better way. We take an empty container, you wipe the inside of his margarine, then you pour a bit of beer in. Now the cockroaches go into the container, but they won't be able to get out.
Say you turn on a light and you see 12 scurrying around, you have a real bad problem. And you have to call in professional fumigators and fumigate the house.
And when we're really sure that they've got the thoughts, we're going to give them a few minutes to warn all their friends that they'd better leave the house.
It's not cool. The cockroach is not feeling any pain. It's instant.
Because bound in already. Ooh. But that is inhumane. We better put it in the microwave. Ah, dead. Good.
If you turn on the light and you have 100 or more, then what you do is you just burn down the house. That'll get rid of them.
The house can be a dangerous place for cockroaches. Many barely escape, losing a few limbs along the way. But they can grow back, bigger and better. Cockroaches grow in a series of molts, casting off their old shells as they outgrow them. Molts are useful as they allow the cockroach to regrow any limbs that have been torn off in the wear and tear of cockroach life, as well as providing a hearty meal. Over the next 4 hours, the white shell hardens, turning to its characteristic brown. This could be its only mistake. Had it remained a pristine white, we might have accepted it into our homes.
Some people are highly offended by cockroaches, and for those people that can't get rid of them but have to put up with them and don't want them spoiling their dinner parties, the trick is to paint them a very popular groovy colour. It's called the moving wallpaper effect. So you have this beautiful moving pattern on your walls, which is becoming very popular. You can't always keep them uniformly on the wall. They tend to, go all over the shop and go out the door and over the table and that, which can be disturbing for guests that aren't used to dealing with them. So one way of getting around that is to spray the wall with a very thin soup, which the cockroaches, of course, once they get on the wall, they'll stay there and eat a bit. Very popular for the daring, for the modern, for the ultra-modern. Someone that wants something a little bit different, something to really impress the guests at your important dinner party.
The invention of white goods and gleaming white kitchens turned the dark cockroach from a nuisance to an aesthetic catastrophe. They needed to be exterminated. Here young scientists are training to test new chemicals. The roaches quickly gain resistance, so constant monitoring is needed in search of the holy grail of pest control. The 100% kill.
Okay, all of them are done. Maybe we should cool them down a bit so they don't run everywhere.
Sydney-siders alone spend $90 million per year spraying 7.5 million litres of organophosphates and 1 million litres of pesticides,
I think that's enough.
propelled by a barrage of advertising, amplifying our irrational fears. The real danger of the roach is grossly overstated, compared to the millions of deaths from the malaria-carrying mosquito or cholera-carrying fly. Cockroaches' unsanitary image is undeserved.
In fact, even the name itself, cockroach, doesn't exactly endear themselves to people. Perhaps they should actually go through a whole name change. We've looked at a lot of different names and researched them, and the name that most people find appealing for cockroaches is the Attenborough, named after David Attenborough, that famous naturalist. I think if people were to say, I've got some Attenboroughs under my kitchen sink, they wouldn't be nearly as distressed about it and want to kill them or do away with it, because let's face it, if you kill an Attenborough, you're killing the spokesperson for every endangered and unendangered species that exists on the earth today.
Our relationship with nature is now encapsulated in a TV set. The white rhino battles extinction. The hole in the ozone layer makes headlines. Yet we continue spraying rivers of poisons, propelled by lakes of fluorocarbons, at the only part of nature that enters the home, the cockroach. Possibly our greatest fear of the roach is that it may outlive us. But no matter what we do, it's likely that they will be roaming the planet long after we're consigned to the graveyard of evolution. Our real fear should be whether we accelerate the inevitable and create a world only fit for the cockroach.